Good evening, everybody. Welcome to HODGEPOD. Rob Fredette here. We're on to another episode, and we're dealing with situational awareness today on this episode. What we do in our daily lives, we always have to watch out for our surroundings. I have a great guest on my podcast. David Lashley is a self-defense instructor, court security expert, and martial artist with over 23 years of experience as a bailiff and court security officer. He has overseen thousands of criminal and civil hearings, including high-profile trials, and specializes in defensive tactics, weapon retention, situational awareness, and de-escalation. David, thank you for joining me. I'm looking forward to talking to you about situational awareness. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
So first of all, I always like to have my guests introduce themselves. Please introduce yourself and some of your background, and we can get into the important stuff.
So my name's David Lashley. I started in the judicial system, judicial protection about 23, almost 24 years ago. Before that, I got heavily involved in martial arts. That's how I should started. And as I progressed, especially when I got involved in the judicial protection aspect of things, I started getting more involved or concentrate more on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Krav Maga, combatives, anything. It was more real reality-based type systems. Have several different black belts in those arts. I've trained the Gracie survival tactic systems to some of the even defendo systems out there, just anything reality-based. And I did start traditional. I have a karate background. I have a black belt in karate and some Japanese jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. But like I said, once I got into working in the court system, did some bouncing and stuff like that, I really shifted gears in the other aspects of martial arts, combatives.
Okay, thank you. That's great. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about tonight, situational awareness and personal protection. But talk about situational awareness, because I'm always like aware of my surroundings when I'm out with my wife, whether we're shopping and if something doesn't look right, I trust my gut and I go somewhere else. So please talk about the situational awareness, if you could, please, because this is something that I think some people may neglect on a daily basis.
So what I've done over the years is been fortunate enough to be in the court system. It gives me a chance. When I sit in a court hearing, I get to see all sides of everything. As in, there's a victim, there's defendants, there's also each victim has family members out there it's affected to, even the defendant who's caused maybe the horrific crimes and stuff. They have family members out there too. So you start to get to really watch people. And that's the biggest thing that I picked up more than anything about it. And hearing what the victims would say if they would have, could have, should have did something or wasn't thinking of that. And most generally, it goes back to a lot of just like fundamental, basic stuff that we know. But as adults, for some reason, and I think it's this modern world that does it, we just get complacent and get a little laxed about things. And I think as adults, as fathers, husbands, grandparents, uncles, aunts, we've all preached these things to our young ones. But as adults, it seems to be, we have a tendency to overlook them. Like I said, I think we know them deep down in, we just get caught up in today's rat race, as they say.
Yeah, I agree. When you see things out like in our everyday lives, we go shopping, we go out to eat at restaurants. It's always good to know what your surroundings are in certain places like restaurants. I always look for the exit doors, where the exit doors are when we go sit, just in case something happens. Even when we go to shopping centers, grocery stores, always know where the exits are. We have certain places we park just away from the hustle and bustle of parking lots. What are some tips that you would talk about if you're talking about situational awareness? Because sometimes I see people on their phones and they're walking right into the store, and they don't even get up to look to see if cars are going. It doesn't have to be crime related, but it could be also be just cars in a parking lot.
No, I agree. And it's going back to the obvious, put the phone down, because that's our biggest distraction today, more than anything else. And then you start adding in just the stresses of life. Maybe you've had a rough day at work, or maybe the kids or something have caused a little bit more stress because of school, or you're just busy, that I think that plays a big part of drawing us into that complacency or that mode where we just don't pay attention like we should. And I think a lot of things that, like when you talk about looking for exits and stuff like that, just don't look at the obvious. Obviously, we can't see an exit at a restaurant, it's in the kitchen, but we know
Right.
there has to be.
Yes.
So those are the ones I think about that we have to keep in mind. And more than likely, that's probably going to be the exit. It's the easiest to use if something really goes down, is in the kitchen area and and those areas. So I think it's like looking at certain things like that we don't maybe think about because we can't see it.
Correct. Yes. I think the kitchen is a great example. If you're in a restaurant, if you're going to escape, the kitchen is, again, because you can exit. Most kitchens are in the back of the restaurant. So that is a great tip. One thing that I usually do, and if I go into a parking lot, if I see something doesn't look right, I always go to another part of the parking lot, because I always trust my gut, because you just never know. It's not being paranoid. It's just being persistent and being ready.
100%. And I think trusting the gut to me is probably as top of the list you can get, especially the older we get with our experiences. Our life experiences help to I believe, form that instinct or our gut instincts with it. And I think a lot of people, a lot of times, just because I think once again, as adults, we act like that teenager. I don't want to get embarrassed. Like, I don't want to say something and be the guy who says something, or someone, like you just said earlier, calls me paranoid. And it's not being paranoid. You're just trying to prepare for something. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, especially when we're talking about our safety and the safety of our loved ones.
Yes. I had a couple years ago, I did a episode on situational awareness with my brother, and we were talking about that, and it's having a plan. The way he phrased it, hope is not a plan. Having a plan is having something in case something happens, and that way you can get to safety. How would you think about if, like, even like on a road, like if you're at an intersection or driving on the road rage could be another thing of being aware of your surroundings too, because some people could really get angry on a car, and a car is a weapon.
Sure. And especially stuff like that, you see it all the time. And when we're in our car and we have that someone's trying to cause us trouble or follow us, or like I said, the road rage, I think what we have in this case, it can really help us, is our technology. If we're not familiar with the area, punch in or ask Sirius to find the closest police department. Let maps take us where we need to go if we feel that threatened, or we can tell that person that angry at us. So I think in those cases, technology is a good thing that helps us with it. And you're just trying to find a place, as you get off the ramp, just don't try to get yourself blocked in. If you see a real busy exit and you realize it's a real busy exit, maybe that might not be the right exit, because you don't want to have 5 cars in front of you and the person who's road rage behind you is parked right behind you like that. So I think it's just looking for and not engaging with those people. Not Just don't fall for it. Don't try to get back at them or provoke them in any way. I think that's also very hard for adults to do sometimes,
Uh-huh.
is to let it go.
What would you say about if you're driving home, if you think you're being followed and somehow a car's following you to your neighborhood, would it be good just not to go to your house, but drive around the neighborhood and try just to keep driving? Or what would be a tip for that? Because I don't think I would want somebody following me to follow me home. That way you could keep them off guard.
Absolutely. And usually in one of the trainings I've been to, that what they'll tell you to do is drive in a loop around your block. And it's obvious if someone's following you in a loop or a circle, that there's a highly likelihood that they are following you. And then that's what you use your phone to get a hold of, find where the local police department, call the police. You're just trying to find somewhere there's someone there for safety in numbers. And I like to think a lot of times. And the more authority you get to a police officer, the less likely that person's going to act out any bad things if you get with a law enforcement officer of some sort.
Hmm. It's always keep people off guard. I did some research here just to see what situational awareness is, and you know what it is. I got this from the Maricopa Attorney General Office in Arizona. Situational awareness is being aware of one's surroundings and any potential hazards or threats. A person who practices situational awareness recognizes the possibility of being attacked, harmed, or put in a dangerous situation and is prepared to act to protect themselves. I thought that was a great definition. And
Yeah.
I think we could all really uptick our situational awareness. What are some other tips that we haven't discussed that you could do in your everyday life, say like shopping or even workplace?
So like especially say like a workplace sort, and it applies anywhere. Like when I'm in the courtroom, the first thing I do when I'm getting ready to have any type of case, but specifically say a murder trial of some sort, I start trying to read the room, feel the atmosphere of the room. I start watching people, maybe a little bit more detailed than what most would when you're out and about. But I like to see exactly, is there something not right in this area that I'm at? Obviously, in the courtroom, I'm not going to let someone wear a long coat in the middle of summer into an area and it looks like they could be hiding something. But I think sometimes we get so laxed that we forget the obvious things like that, though. I think you should always start with, is a guy staring you down? Is someone for some reason got that, fist up and clench in, their jaw lines a little rigid? Maybe you didn't know that you bumped them or cut them off in some way. That's a lot of times it could be just truly accidental, but we don't know the minds of those people with it. So never dismiss the obvious stuff that could be right in front of you. And then I start when I'm in the courtroom, then I start just watching how people act. And then it could be as simple, to me, the most silent person, the one who's being the quietest, that'll get my attention as quick as someone who's upset. Because people, when they're upset, it's hard for them to hide those emotions. And those are ones it's easy for me to deal with or spot or pick out
Hmm.
what I need to do. But the person that's working very hard to be quiet, he's working very hard to be so casual that he does not want to be noticed. Those are the ones I start to watch probably a little bit more hard than I would the people that are like showing like the outwardly, because I know where they're at. I understand what they're angry. I understand why they're angry, who they're angry there for. So just paying attention when you're out and you're seeing someone, is it a coincidence if the same person follows you into the second store? It could be. But once again, if it's a man and you go into a woman's store and you see him for the third time, that's a real eye opener. You should start just paying attention to seeing like how people are following you in those things like that. And I think if we start just watching outwardly, and that's how I do. I start out and I work myself back in. I like to see the back of the room and I work myself back with it. And I think that's how we need to do it. When we go to a store, you know, I get out of my car. Yeah, I need to look what's right in front of
Yep.
me. But if I see a threat already happening at the front of the store, I'm not going in. Or if I see a fight breaking out, there's someone's car being broken into. That's why I like to work out and work back in per se when I first get out, and then I make my adjustments just like I would in like a courtroom at
Mm.
that point.
You mentioned I do that when I walk into a store. I always assess the area with the cars parked just to see what's going on, if people are standing around or whatnot. And I always think if you just stay alert, that could make it a lot easier. Just again, you don't have to be paranoid. You just have to be ready and just be aware of the surroundings. What are some tips that we could do in our everyday lives when we go out that we haven't covered right now for situational awareness? Because again, very important. What are some other tips?
And just going back to what you say, I think another thing, it's how we present ourselves physically too. Upright, showing some confidence at things. I'm not telling you to walk into a store or walk through a mall with my fist up like that. But I am saying if you're upright and alert, even if maybe you don't catch everything, they don't know that. It looks like you're scanning. I would do the scans and stuff like that. Just how you present yourself. I think we've heard it so many times. The lions prey on the gazelles in the back of the pack.
Mhm.
And you'll always say it's because it's the weakest ones. Is it really always the weakest ones, or is it the ones it's just lollygagging around and just not paying attention? Everybody's taking care of it. I just got to follow the group. It could be because they're weak. I'm not saying that, but sometimes I think it's just how people go out and about that. Eh, I think that's some of the biggest is how we present ourselves in public.
I agree. What are some other things that we could have in our car? Like I carry the little first aid kit in my car. I carry towels, paper towels in my car. What are some things that we can keep in our car, maybe in case something happens, that little tips that we have, like a battery generator or things like that?
I keep a tourniquet in my car. That's with like a small, like you said, first aid kit with it. I do have pepper spray in it because there's places that I'm not allowed to carry, and we're an open carry state, but there's still certain businesses in certain places. I was just hiking at State Park. I can't carry a firearm in a state park, but I can carry stuff like pepper spray or a small knife or some sort like that. I'm real cautious when it comes. I tell people when they want to carry other type of weapons and stuff, I think you need to train a little bit in it. I don't think you have to get crazy, but if you've never bought an extra pepper spray and just took some time to spray like a pie paper plate or something, you understand how it works a little bit. Did you buy a missed one on accident? Did you get the stream one? Stuff like that. I think just take the time and train it. I keep a flashlight, and in flashlight, especially the they make today, they're great self defense between using it as a weapon to hit with, but there's nothing like these lights that they'll put in your eyes. You make someone see some spots for a little bit where you maybe that's all you need is to get away for a little bit. So those are things that I keep in my vehicle. But I think a flashlight's probably the biggest thing I would tell people to keep in it because you can just use it for so many things. The strike with to actually flashing it, blinding them with it.
I never thought about having a flashlight. I might have to get a good sized flashlight as well. So that's a great point. Talk about your self defense career. Obviously, that must help you as well. For those that are weak, for like myself, or maybe some of my listeners who are not in self defense, what are some things that we can do? And talk about your self defense career as well.
So I started out in traditional martial arts, and it was a karate, and I broke away to it. I started doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu because I wanted at that time, and I did a little bit of amateur fighting as an MMA fighter, and that was the route I wanted to take. And as I progressed with it, I think those two, any type of MMA and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, I think they're some of the best, if not the best, when it comes to self defense, if you have the time to put into it. You have to train those to become very efficient at them. But so what wanted to find out when I wanted to teach people is what if I have the person that doesn't have I was a guy trained 3, 4, 5 days a week. So someone asked me to go to a Krav Maga class. So I went to a Krav Maga class, and I was sitting here and I was watching someone who first night as I was, like I said, I played sports. I've already did some combat sports. This person came in and they struggled as in the coordination aspect. You can tell they just never done anything like that. I watched this 30-minute intro. They took a 45-minute class, and the basic striking they showed and the choke escape, I'm not telling you performing it where it was the best you've ever seen, but I'm like, boy, if somebody actually choked them tonight and they left, I think they would get away. I'm not saying they would hurt the person, but they were going to look like the next Mike Tyson or something with it. But it was like, that's all they needed. And they did this in 30 minutes, 45 minutes to learn this. And that's when I was like, I want to know more how to do this. That's when the reality based and the combatives really came to mind because I think jujitsu's great and I love Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but you cannot take someone who's never done anything in 35, 40 minutes and show them. You might be able to show them how to do an arm bar, but there's no way you can show them how to apply it, set it up, and all different aspects from being on your back, standing up, to putting them on their back to be able to do it. That's why I went that way. And then when I teach my Krav Maga classes, I try to blend the jiu-jitsu in it slowly, like the basic bent arm locks and like guillotine chokes and stuff that over time, they can pick it up. Our goal is when you get a Krav Maga black belt at our gym, you will also should have the knowledge and be able to obtain a BJJ blue belt. And I believe those combined together, it's about as good as you could get with it. But that's the aspect I really took in was heading towards the more combat, especially the older I get. I don't compete like I used to back in the day. And sitting in court, that was another reason. I'm sitting here watching all these women come through these stalking hearings, these civil protection hearings. And I'm like, if I could have just showed them something or told them something, I'm not saying I would have made them superwoman by any stretch, but I think the outcome could have been different. Or maybe it would have been the abuse, maybe wouldn't have been as bad or less likely to even the awareness aspect of things. Give them some tools they use for preventative measures as much as the physical measures of things.
Interesting. As we get older, you said you don't compete as much anymore. It's amazing. When you get older, your body can't do it, but your mind wants to. I feel that too sometimes. I got to modify some things in exercising, but you can always be alert. Another place where I just thought of something now is senior living communities too, being situational awareness, being aware of your surroundings for people who live in senior living facilities. As you see that as also a big key?
I do. And actually, I just gave probably in the last 6 months, I gave a talk at a senior living. It could have been closer to a nursing home, but it was a combination of maybe both. And just once again, yeah, trying to remind them what to look for with it. And I think the hardest part, especially I think seniors, I believe most people are good people and we're taught to be good. When you're raised that way and you're raised to be respectful, especially the older generation and stuff, I think it's easier for them to get taken advantage of. And it's easier for them to try to go, if I just comply, if I just tell them what they want to hear per se, they're going to quit. It's going to go away. And then the next step is if it gets to the point where they're lucky and it does go away or they don't want to report it. It's like I said, it's almost like when we're back in school, nobody wants to be the tattletale. And it's getting them, let them know that there's people you need to tell so you don't get put in these situations again.
Are there any places in our communities where we can look for getting like training or just classes anywhere like I'm in Memphis. Is there any places like in any cities that have like classes for situational awareness? I know they have active shooting situations where you can go to your law enforcement and they can teach you about it, but is there anything like privately that you can think of?
Most generally, like a lot of the Krav Maga schools will have those classes or like special events throughout the year. but online would probably be the easiest, or a hybrid type where you could have someone come in and still do something online with it. I like it in person myself. I think getting people to be a little bit more interactive with it helps them a little bit. We'll do certain things like when I teach, I just taught a women's self defense, and in the front of the gym, I put a certain type of t shirt on a mannequin. And when they all walk in, we'll start to do something, and I'll just tell them to close their eyes. And I'm like, so what color shirt was the person or the mannequin wearing when you came in? And 95% have no idea. They're talking, or their nerves are nervous because they're going into something they never did before. They're just not paying attention. And then I'll go, okay, where's our TV at? Which, when you walk through our doors, you'll pass this mannequin. To our right's our area for our customers, like a lounge. There's a 52-inch TV sitting on the wall. Usually something's playing on it. And once again, it goes up a little bit higher because there's now noise involved, or like some lights, but it's still, I'll say 70, 75% don't know where it's at with it. So it's just doing stuff like that. You might remember when we was younger, we used to play a game called Slug Bug.
Yeah.
When you, yeah, I mean, you can make it anything like that, but when you put stuff out there for kids or anybody to look for and make it like a game like that per se, I think it helps your brain to process stuff like that, and that's why I like about, I think when you're training somewhat of some sort, even if it is situational awareness or even physical techniques, I think the more you're training, the more apt you are to use it. It's no different. Most generally, when people start exercising, we might not intentionally want to diet, but we start to diet a little bit. We clean our meals up. We
Yeah.
might not per se go to diet, but we'll clean up ourselves because we're in that like mode, like training mode. And I think it's no different with self defense or awareness. If you make yourself do certain things, they go together. They'll start putting themselves together.
You mentioned something about numbers, being strength in numbers with people. There's that case now in the Dominican Republic where that young college student is missing on spring break, and she was with a group of friends. We don't know what happened, but she's missing. I would say always never leave your friends or anything like that, because you just don't know what happened. There's strength in numbers. Talk about that, because strength in numbers can be a lifesaver.
Yeah, it's just, that's why in the wild they travel a lot of times in packs. We pack of dogs, pack of wolves,
Yep.
uh, a crash of rhinos, because even though some of those are, like a rhino is a massive, one of the strongest animals in the world, but they're better in a group. Even silverbacks will travel with a group when they establish who's their male dominant. They want to be around the strongest gorilla. And I think that's it. It's key because, especially if you're with the right group, if you're with your friends, everybody should be looking out for one another with it. And you really need that one friend in the group. It doesn't mind, especially I will say college students that will say, no, you've had too much. That's enough. Or if they're not going to listen, they're going to step at the plate and really watch, because those are the ones that get taken more than likely advantage of before the other ones do. And especially young women, someone's watching. You almost should not just have a designated driver with you, but that designated driver should be doing more than to worry about driving. It's really watching the group with it. But I think it's important, two or three in a group, even shopping at a local mall, something like that. It's less of a deterrent. If a guy wants to rob you, he doesn't want to rob you with three or four people. He wants to do it one on one with that.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm not saying all people are bad. It's just that you want to be ready for that instance where something may happen, that you want to be ready to defend yourself. Also, talk about, you mentioned the group there of the women, and they didn't know the color shirt. Talk about like descriptions. What are some key descriptions in case something happens that you would have to get for a person or somebody that you, if you were a witness.
As in a witness for.
Well, just like if something happens, like height, weight, what are some key
Oh,
clothing? I'm sorry.
yeah. No, just like that. Yeah. You're trying to see exactly what the process. I've heard of, like, prosecutors would ask, where they're asking questions, is what was he wearing? Did he have a limp? Sometimes, a lot of times, I'll see a lot of criminals get caught because we've had a couple criminals get convicted because their hands were different. They were charged with some sexual assault cases, and they actually videotaped everything, but you couldn't see their head or nothing. But their hands were distinguished because they were mechanics. They had, and so it was, so when he's sitting there, it was obvious that those hands matched up. Like tattoos, something that sticks out, that it gets your attention about it. Anything you can really stick out, especially if something's gone to the part where someone's been taken. You're trying to get as much as you can about height, weight, everything, like clothing, anything like that. Which, maybe they're wearing like Nike shoes or something that is just, it's standing out, that you can start looking for, especially if you're looking on video. If there's like video, they can start, because a lot of times it's, they'll look at video not just when the incident happened, they'll watch them before the incident happens to see, was there some details of why they picked out this group or that person or something like that. So it gives you, and some of these guys are smart enough to know when they go to do something, they'd find a blind spot. And because it's more than likely has not been the first time they've tried this, especially when you're talking young people going on spring breaks and stuff like that.
Exactly. You're an author of a book as well called Eyes Wide Open. It's focused on situational awareness and de-escalation. Talk about your book first off, and then let's talk about de-escalation, because I think that's something we could all use, just a little taking the temperature down.
So when I decided to write the book, like I said a little earlier, I would go to these seminars I teach for our gym and stuff, and I would start describing cases, and I would put in, this is why we do this, because for my area, about 70, if not percent higher, most civil protections or domestic violence situations, the women's being choked. So and I use the word choke. I should be saying strangled. They're being strangled. Their hands are around the neck like that. And so I usually try to always start off showing those type of escape techniques. And my son was like, yeah, Dad, you need to write this down. You tell stories. You're telling exactly what the victim said and what they wish they would have looked for, or just different things like that. So I took my 23 years of working in the court system, and I picked out different things about situational awareness and de-escalation, because I think right now there is a lot of great information out there, probably more than we've ever seen. And the book was made to bring it back down to, like I talked about, fundamentals, the simplistic of things. I think we've forgot, like, it would go to a seminar and I'd be a part of a group talking, and they would talk about different parts of situational awareness, but nobody would mention if someone's got a fist clenched, gritting their teeth. No one would talk about that. Like, they want to talk about the science of this or different. It's great. Don't get me wrong. It's unbelievable, but it's like we were forgetting the real basics of things, what people should, what's in front of them right now, I felt. And that's why I wrote the book, and using my court experiences was part of that. And it's just like with de-escalation, it's a lot of times for me, how I treat it is no different. I'm in a court situation. If I was coming to take you to another room handcuffed, or you're upset with the outcome. You didn't like what the judge said. You didn't like the ruling. And I sat through all the divorce hearings. I've sat through over, I think they told me over 15,000 domestic relation hearings
Oh.
in my time with it. And you learn a lot about people in those more than anything. But a lot of times what I found out, and did they escalate something, if I give you a chance to be heard a little bit, that it seemed to bring things down. And usually if I let you be heard a little bit, now I can't let it get out of control, but then I've noticed if I acknowledge some empathy, that that's awful. I don't usually say I know where you're coming from unless I've experienced what they're coming from, because I think people get upset over stuff like that
Mhm.
with it. So that's usually the way I try to handle it. And then as I'm doing that, I'm trying to get them to move or walk towards an exit, just to move a little bit. And I think there's something to that when you can get people to not like get set into this fight position and get ready to like dig in, because they're ready for it. They're ready for the argument. They're ready for the fight with it. And I've noticed when I've had people apply like those kind of basic things like that, I've got great reviews coming back to me saying, "Hey, I can't believe by just sitting there listening for a second before I spoke, didn't argue back, and then came back with, oh, I understand. I see where you're coming from." Just trying to bring it down a little bit like that. I'm not going to say it's going to work every time, but you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And then when you get people kind of moving in the right direction, and whatever that may be, maybe it's just walking them back to their car. For me, it's taking them away from people. I've noticed two things. When people are in front of crowds, they either want to do one or two things. They either want to put a show on for everybody, or they get escalated or mad faster because they're embarrassed. So if I can take them away from the crowd and do some of the other things, it's always seemed to work for me over the last 20 plus years to help de-escalate things.
Yeah, de-escalation, you mentioned another word, empathy. If we had a little bit more empathy, and I also think too, social media showing all these fights and things like that doesn't help the situation either. I think that ramps it up a bit.
I agree with you. It's almost like it's being glorified
Yeah.
because you're getting likes and shares for it.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
there's stuff out there that people, it's like a game. It they people do this thing like it's a game when people get in a fight. It's not funny. These are people's lives. People are victims. What other things would you say are, as far as de-escalation? One thing, we had a snowstorm here in Memphis back in January, and I drove my wife to work early in the morning, and I was going about 20 miles an hour because it was ice and snow. And this pickup truck passed me going about 60. And I don't know why he was going 60 on one of the main roads here. And rather than get mad, I said, knock yourself out, man, knock yourself out, because he could have caused an accident, but I could have gotten that road rage and stuff like that. I just decided, go ahead, knock yourself out. That's a good way to de-escalate. Just take a deep breath.
I agree. Yeah, it's funny. My other day we had my 4-year-old granddaughter, and I forget where we were at, but we were doing something, and me and my wife, we were like with her talking, and I don't, for whatever reason, she must have thought we raised her voice or we were anxious about something. And she just looks, and she's 4 years old, and she goes, "Just relax." And I think about that, but it, that's what we just need to do when people start in like that. Just relax. Like what you did was perfectly, I think, the best thing to do. Have at it, go at it. When I was younger, when people had road rage, it might be some yelling, screaming, some hand waving. Now, when we see it, someone jumps out with a gun,
Yeah.
and it's so you're better off just like you said, just let it. I'm not saying it's easy, but taking that breath and just letting it go. Just try to get your thoughts on something else, and not. And I think it's hard because we get, like I said, our life can be stressful. and certain things at that right time seem to push people's buttons,
Yeah,
and it's hard sometimes.
I agree. Somebody going that fast could cause an accident. That was my
Yeah,
whole premise. And but I just said, knock yourself out. And there was a couple of other cars, pickups that flew by, and it was like, you want to get in a car wreck? I'll see you about a mile up the road. They didn't, but it was just like, I don't know why people do that. Talk about some other items. You've seen what, overseen thousands of criminal and civil hearings. What's that career been like for you?
it's interesting because every day it's something different. My cases have ranged from a basic disillusion to I've been in 8, 9, 10-day divorce cases. I've sat through I've been through a passing bad check to I've sat through 3 or 4 murder trials to about another 6 or 7 murders we've had, like different hearings and stuff. Literally today, I sat in a bond hearing and see if they would not issue bond because the guy had over 52,000 images of child pornography on his computer, and then they found like 100 ounces. And I say this is allegedly because he hasn't been convicted yet, but over 100 ounces of cocaine when they went to confiscate the computer electronic devices, I should say, with it. So I've said all ranges. There probably hasn't been some type of trial. I've sat through millions of medical malpractice where the person was awarded $5 million to a local college, had archives stolen, and the people said no, someone just threw them in the dumpster, and that they stole almost, it was like $980,000 worth of archive materials, writings of a local author and stuff. So it's different every day, and it helps keep you grounded too, guys. I do see both sides. I see victims, and hearing them give a victim impact statement. It's brutal when it's a child crime. When you're hearing the parents get up there and talk, when they've trusted this family member or friend and they've done something harmful to their child. Two, I've sat through murder trials where what I've been told and understood that the parents were pretty good people, but their son committed a horrific crime and murdered someone. And you can tell, and the parents don't agree with this whatsoever, but it's still their son. And you see a different side when you start seeing stuff like that. And it's like the child crimes are probably the hardest to deal with than anything because they're just, it's children, they're innocent and stuff. But there's not too many things I haven't seen or set through with it.
So has there ever been a day? Have you ever had? You said a high profile trials. Have you ever been in any high profile trials?
Yeah, we had one. Most people have heard it. It's like 10, 11 years ago. It was the the guy, they call him the leaf killer. He killed and cut up 3 bodies and put them in a tree. And so I don't usually say the names of them.
Okay, that's all right.
I don't like to give those people any publicity whatsoever. But it made world news. Like it was in our area, it was really bad. Just terrific scene and stuff like that.
You said it grounds you. Do you ever get like a certain day? It looks like you get drained when you leave work when you go through something like that.
Yeah. It's because say a jury trial, it's not I mean, the day starts for me. I'm preparing, especially if it's a criminal. I'm preparing for the security aspect of things before everybody gets there. And so I have to make sure the courthouse is properly taken care of. I have to make sure we're going to bring the defendant in. Yeah, everything's safe and sound. Remember, his safety is just as important as anybody else that's coming through the front doors. That's the thing. I want to make sure anyone who walks through those front doors comes in safe and leaves safe with it. So we prepare for a trial. There's a lot of little things like that you got to get ready for. And then when you're summoned in a jury, you could have 75 to 100 people being some jurors. And then after they go through the process of being selected, when that trial starts, they're my responsibility. I take care of them in between breaks during the trial. If there's something they need, we have like different ways for them to get my attention. So if they need something, to lunch, to deliberations, like nobody can speak to a juror once the trial started, but the whole courthouse, everybody's in the courthouse. There's a trial going on. There's other business going on. So yeah, when you get that, and then you put in like a horrific crime that you're dealing with on top of it, and then jurors uh, keep going back to it. But like we had a child pornography case, and it was a truck driver was distributing and partaking in child pornography. I sat through a 3-day trial with this, and there's 14 jurors. Not one of them after the trial told me they've never even seen pornography before. And their first experience of seeing anything like that is now child pornography. I had jurors crying during the trial because you have to witness so much of the video to show what he was doing and stuff. And so, yeah, that it is. That could be draining on those days because when you're taking care of all that, I still have to take care of a defendant, make sure he gets out of there, and we get ready for the next day and start it all over again until we get to the end.
Wow, that's unbelievable. My goodness. We'll wrap up on the situational awareness. If you had some key points for us in our everyday lives to summarize, what are some things we can do on our daily activities, our daily living that we can do when we're out and about?
So I look at it like a lot of people talk about the OODA loop and different ways, the collar codes. I like to use one called SLAM. I think it's a little bit easier to follow, and it's 4 letters. And I think if you use their basic methods, I think it goes a long ways. And SLAM, what it stands for is stop, look, access, assess, and manage. And I think those are pretty self-explanatory. Stop and just look, stop where you're at. Get caught into the environment. See where you're at. Understand where you're going when you get there. Prepare if it's area that has a little bit of maybe known for so of a bad area. Just when you get out of your car or you're going to that store, just stop for a second and take it in, observe. And that's something you go a little bit deeper, then start looking and look for the things that just don't seem right. And maybe everything's great. It's a sunny, beautiful day. Everything's fine. That's great. That's what you're hoping for. It doesn't mean everything's gloom and doom every time you travel somewhere with it.
I know. Yeah.
But you're just taking the time and looking and what's out of place. Doesn't seem right with it. Maybe I'm just going to a grocery store and where I had to park, where I wanted to park, there's just a group of people congregating right there. Don't get complacent or a little bit lazy. Move your car. Don't go to another parking spot. That extra 30 seconds to pull 3 or 4 rows could just be life-changing per se. And I think that's sometimes we get caught up in that. We're in a hurry. We have to get where we need to get quick. I always say, yeah, everybody speeds, but it is really saving 2 minutes worth $350. At the end of the day, you're saving seconds or minutes. It's not like you're saving hours when you speed. And we don't even, and we don't even talk about what accident we could cause. But anyways, and then if you do see something, like I said, this people congregate, you assess it. What type of group is getting together? Is it just a bunch of Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts selling their cookies or something? Then you've assessed it. No, I can park here, I can walk. Or is it a group of people that I just don't know if I should be walking around. I don't like how they're acting, or they got loud music going and I see bottles, beer bottles or something like that. Assess it to that point. And then we go right into it. As you're assessing it, you manage it. And that's what you're doing. How do you manage this? Do I just pull up? Oh no, it's a good group. I can walk on. But I like teaching the slam method because they go right together. And I think it's real simple. You're doing it as you're going. It's not like I make it sound like we're going step 1, 2, 3, 4, but really it's 1 through 4. They just kind of roll in together. You're actually doing it. Like almost like you're driving a car. We know what to look for. We don't think about it. And that's what I like to see people do is you're stopping, you're looking, you're assessing, you manage at one time. And the easiest way to do that is put your phone down.
Yes, I see people walking with watching their phone, not paying any attention. And like you said, when I shop with my wife, there's been a couple instances. If something doesn't look right, we go to the other side of the parking lot. I'm not going to take that chance. But yes, put the phones down, because one thing I do when I walk in the store, I put it in my back pocket and I go into the store, and you just never know what can happen. Again, it's not being paranoid, it's just being aware of your surroundings. David Lashley, I want to thank you very much for coming on my podcast, talking about situational awareness and also de-escalation, your career as well. I want to thank you very much for coming on. I think you gave some great tips.
I appreciate you having me. I enjoy it. And I'm hoping I can give maybe just a little different perspective because of what I do for a living. That's the whole idea behind it. That was the idea behind the book too.
Yeah.
Thank
And the
you.
name of the book is Eyes Wide Open. It's a book focused on situational awareness and de-escalation. Another word David talked about was empathy, de-escalate any situation you're in. And his experience was truly really hit the point tonight on this podcast.